Did
wrong, then.
the spring gets compressed because the integrity of the, how you say?
You're in denial of Newton's laws, I'm afraid, if you're doing this.
No. The integrity of the structure of the spring
Integrity.
is not strong enough to hold the weight of the.
Weight is a force. If you use the word weight, you will mean force.
I don't know why you guys are obsessed with things that you cannot prove.
Well,
now you say.
What do you think scales are? They're force measuring devices.
You say things like the floor is pushing. Do you even hear yourself?
We're losing,
man.
We're only getting half of what you're saying, I'm afraid.
I'm sorry. I'm driving. My signal is weak, I guess.
Right. You really ought to try going into school for 12-year-olds. Go and get a book for 12-year-olds on physics for 12-year-olds, and you would start to understand what's going on. And then learn about Newton's laws, which describe forces, and Newton's second law in particular, force is equal to mass times acceleration, and you'll bring yourself up to the educational level of a 12-year-old.
Well, I don't want to be brainwashed like you know?
Well, I'm afraid we've got this whole body of human knowledge that we've acquired over the last 2,000 years, and you're just going to chuck it away and come up with some idea of your own that isn't being validated. All the things that I described have been validated, peer-reviewed, and are part of established. If you could refute them, you would be given a Nobel Prize. If you could refute anything I've just said, you would get a Nobel Prize.
The only reason why you need gravity is because you needed an explanation for why people doesn't fly away on the ball below, you know? That's why you needed gravity.
Well, we can measure it, whatever your name is.
But you can.
That's gravitational pull.
That's what force. That's what scales do. You measure the force, and that force
measure weight.
Scales equals by gravity.
Rumpus.
No, you measure the weight, the mass, the weight of the mass. That's what you measure.
You don't understand the difference between weight and mass, do you? Arwen keeps on trying to ask me a question. Arwen, go ahead. Or are you just telling me to shut up?
No.
You're telling me to shut up? Or
you're telling you to shut up. You never do it anyway. I'm just asking you to please control yourself, because this is actually an interesting debate, and it's just a waste of time when you get in this mood, you know.
But Arwen, you
do so much more.
Interrupt. Arwen, unfortunately, you interrupt a lot, and if you didn't do that,
do you.
No, I don't. I try.
No, you don't.
No, Arwen, you must be aware that Nathan keeps on interrupting me whenever I get about 3 or 4 words into.
I know.
I must admit, this time he's actually been quite good.
But if you're gonna rump us over it, it's
not.
No,
I don't. Arwen, I only do that when I'm not allowed to get out a sentence. Or
but it's no use doing that. It's just interruptive.
Yes,
everyone
but
gets annoyed by it.
If I'm
no more communication
after 4 or 5 words, I'm afraid I'm not going to stand for it. I'm sorry.
Well, then just leave.
Yeah, but you talk continually, Rumpus.
If
no one interrupted you, Rumpus, like now.
Okay? I wanted to get back to Newton's and the forces.
If no one ever interrupted you, Rumpus, you would talk non-stop. You would talk indefinitely.
No, I'm going to keep it short. I just wanted to say that the whole forces opposing forces of Newton is a concept. And it's hold on, I'm not done. It's a very useful concept to conceptualize a wide variety of effects. But it's a concept. It's not really literal. It's
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you'd like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and there's also a PayPal link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. Now we are joined by the Plain Truth, SX, the Rumpus, Sleeping Warrior, Oblate Spheroid, Jose, Jared, Benjamin, and Arwin. Good to have you all.
Good afternoon.
But I need 5 more seconds. But I need 5 more seconds. But I need 5 more seconds. Sorry.
No.
Is it okay? Can I carry on from where we left off? I'd like to represent the last 2 minutes and then ask Rumpus a question.
I don't care.
Would you present my screen?
Sure.
Go ahead.
All right, so Rumpus, I'm talking with regard to your pink ball example with the spring and the floor, and your position is that there's a net force of 0 because the weight of the ball is countered by the force of the floor pushing back up against it, yeah?
Correct.
Now, you said that this is a state of equilibrium, and I didn't agree because I felt that at the state of equilibrium doesn't have anything that's physically stopping it from moving.
The definition of equilibrium is a net force of 0.
Well, so what I did was I looked up the definition of equilibrium, and it says an equilibrium is defined as a state of balance or stable situation where opposing forces cancel each other out and where no changes are occurring. Now, everything in my body tells me that that's not the same as an egg suspended in water.
Well, so that's a different situation. I'll explain that to you if you like.
Hang on, wait. So, because I'm not satisfied that when it says about forces, I'm not satisfied that it's satisfying the definition of physical action because it's a barrier, it's a resistance, and we've just had the hangout based on it. So what I did was I went from there to see is there another term that we can use to describe the difference between what you're showing with the pink ball and the floor and an egg that's suspended in water that's not got a layer of resistance that's stopping it from moving. So I found this phrase called neutral buoyancy, and I'll read what it says. It says, a neutral buoyancy is a condition in which a physical body's average density, so we'll say an egg, is equal to the density of the fluid in which it's immersed. So that would be the water. So it seems to me that the word we should be using to describe the difference between what you're saying here, which is a ball being supported by the floor, and the egg that's suspended in the water, we shouldn't use the phrase equilibrium. We should use neutral buoyancy.
No.
Because the fact of the matter is, Rumpus, and this is the bit where you can interrupt.
No, it is an
Not the same
equilibrium.
setup.
Hang on. The fact of the matter is, if the floor wasn't there, the ball would continue to fall down. So the floor is a force that's been. It's not a force. It's a resistance. It's a resistance to stop the ball from falling.
Yeah, but the
ball is in a state of not neutral buoyancy. It's heavier than the environment it's in. So the floor is only acting as a brake. But
with force.
Heavier.
But you're calling it a force. But you're calling it a force.
But Anthony, if there was no net, if the net force on the ball was not 0, it has to be opposed. The weight has to be opposed by a force. Weight is a force. You have to oppose that force with another force as the definition of equilibrium to make the net force equal to 0. If the net force wasn't 0, the ball would move.
But Rumpus, the problem that I've got is that physical action is required for the floor, and I don't think that satisfies the definition of
how
force.
spring works, Anthony. Do you not understand
Structural tension. It's
okay, but we have a
It's not
disagreement.
tension when
Yes, it is. It is structural tension,
is
just like a spring.
Hang on,
Arwin, don't obfuscate.
Let me just indulge
It's
Arwin.
not obfuscation.
Do you
That's
understand
what it is.
Question.
Arwin,
My question.
the tension is pulling, whereas we're dealing here with compression or pushing. You've got it completely wrong.
Rumpus, listen, I'm nearly at my question.
Okay, go.
I'm literally there. Because we disagree on whether or not this equilibrium state, that I agree with you that your ball does satisfy, but it doesn't match the egg suspended in water.
Okay, I'll describe that.
Hang on. Because we disagree on this word of physical action and force, my question is, does neutral buoyancy not satisfy exactly the difference between an egg that's suspended in water without any restraints and your pink ball that is not suspended on its own free will and it's got the ground stopping it from moving down further? Is it accurate to describe your pink ball as a force when neutral buoyancy is exactly what we see with the egg? Because the egg is a physical body's average density equal to the density of the fluid in which it's immersed.
You've lost. You're starting to go into gibberish mode, I'm afraid. I'll explain it to you, and perhaps this will. This is the situation with the ball. The egg in water is more complicated because you've got the additional effect of the medium the thing is in here. I'm pretending this is in a vacuum. So
Well, hang on, just answer this. Can you agree that the egg in the water satisfies this? Neutral buoyancy is a condition in which a physical body's average density is equal
Yes.
to the density.
Neutral buoyancy, you're correct. That is neutral
That's caused by the fact that the weight of the displaced water equals the weight of the object that it's displaced. So the forces are equal and you have an equilibrium. I'll explain that in a second.
That's correct.
So then the question is, if you agree with that in the egg and being in the water, if that bit's agreed, then how does that contrast to that? Because it's not the same, because there's a flaw in the way.
Well, I'll explain, Anthony, but you keep on stopping me from doing so. Let's just see if you accept this for the moment. Do you understand that a spring, if you can conceptualize that the floor has a little spring in it, do you accept that model? So if I can then, there's a net force of zero.
Not in this context, no.
Well, yeah, not in the board. It's a more complicated situation in the water, and I'll get to that. But can we take the simple situation here? And do we agree? So I know where to start from and how to progress the argument. That if you accept that there's a little spring that the ball's sitting on, that the spring will compress to the point that it exerts a force back up on the ball, such that the net force on the ball is zero. Do you understand that?
No,
not necessary, Rumpus.
Okay,
I don't agree that the definition of force is satisfied in one way. One way, the weight of the ball is pushing down on the spring, and the force will be the weight of the ball. But you're saying that there's an equal and opposite force pushing back up from the spring.
Yeah. Right, but you must accept if I were to.
But there's nothing pushing the spring up, though.
It's structural tension.
Well, it is because there's the Earth sitting here. Yes, there has to be. I mean, ultimately, you're right. This, as I've drawn it, so you have to have. I'd have to put the body of the Earth. They're actually forces are transmitted. So the force that the spring exerted has to be provided by the force coming up here.
See, I agree with Nathan,
though. It's obviously if this floor was in just in midair, nothing would be supporting it. But of course, it's not. It's on the ground, and there's the body of the Earth there, which refuses to be compressed as well.
But hang on, Rumpus. This is really where the disagreement lies, because Nathan described that as a resistance, and I agree with that definition or that description.
Well, that's a layman's term for force.
No, it's not. It's not. We've had the definition.
Actually, you do accept that when you compress a spring, it exerts a force back. Do you understand that?
No.
Force is a generalization.
Oh my God! Did I just hear what I just heard?
Anthony, it's an overgeneralization.
Owen, can you just let Anthony deal with Rumpus, please?
Anthony, did I just hear you say that you don't accept that when you compress a spring that it exerts a force back? And in your hands,
who cares? We're not talking about springs. You've just inserted this spring with a whole other load of forces that you don't have in the Earth. I've already gone through this. We're not talking about the spring. That's just something you've inserted.
Like a spring.
That when under compression will exert a force because it's a spring, unlike the Earth.
I don't agree. It's a force. I agree.
Anthony, do you understand that when you compress a spring? Hold on, Anthony. Do you accept that when you compress a spring, that it exerts a force back on your hands?
It doesn't satisfy the definition of force.
Oh my God!
It exerts a resistance. It exerts an existence, Rumpus.
Oh my God, Anthony! If you put a force meter in your hands and you compress the spring, the force meter, which is what scales are, would show a value with which
going
the spring
down
is pushing back.
Yeah, but you're arguing that there's a force going the other way.
Yes.
No.
But yeah, he's arguing it for a spring. That's where it's being tricky. So let's just point out what he's doing. He's arguing for a force going the other way and arguing it quite succinctly for a spring.
Yes, and
yeah, well, we're not talking about a spring. That's just a false equivalency that you've brought in, Rumpus. So take your spring and shove it up your ass.
At the molecular level, it's a spring, you idiot.
No, doesn't spring back. The Earth gets compressed.
And it does spring back.
No, it gets compressed. It gets squashed.
It springs back, Nathan.
Oh, really? I put a rock on my ground outside, and when I removed the rock, there's an indentation.
Oh, well, that depends how soft it is. Okay, there are what's called elastic behaviour and non-elastic behaviour. If you put it on something that was hard, like steel, it would spring back. But obviously, you put it on some soft ground.
So if I put it on steel, the steel compresses. I put a rock on steel, and you're telling me the steel compresses?
Correct.
Oh, really?
It's true. Yeah.
So you can measure that, can you? Like you can with a spring.
12-year-old.
Structural tension. This is architecture stuff. Come on.
It's a false equivalent.
This is a false equivalent.
No, I'm not having it. This spring is nonsense.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
Oh, Arwin. This is a false equivalent. Simple.
Equivalence, you mean? Speak in English.
Rumpus. Just for the sake of this part of the discussion, can we agree to disagree and move
No,
forward?
you can't, because Anthony, if you don't
Hi, Truth
understand that a
Seeker.
spring exerts a force on you, that
Can
is
someone
so
get Truth
basic.
Seeker out the
Well,
back
what I'm
chat?
going to do-
Hello? Can someone get Truth Seeker out the back chat before he snipes everyone?
Oh, what?
Is it not? Yeah, we don't know which truth seeker it is.
Okay, I got him.
Right,
Nath,
okay.
Nath,
we
just
need-
present my screen again, please.
Hold on, I thought I was in the process of explaining the buoyancy situation.
No, well, hang on. Let me just go back to. Let me know when we're on, Nath.
Yeah, you're on.
Right, so we've got to the point where I agree that the definition of equilibrium can be satisfied by both the example with the pink ball that you gave and the egg that's suspended in the water, but they don't appear to be the same.
I would, Anthony, you haven't let me get around to explain the egg in the water, have
Wait
you?
a sec. Wait a sec. The issue that we've got to is the definition of force, which we can't agree on, and I think that the best way to do this would be just to agree to disagree at the moment and move forward. Because what I'm going to suggest is, if I have your pink ball on screen, and there's a flaw in the way, which is the issue that I take issue with, is it not the case that the ball, this pink ball, is in a state of non-neutral buoyancy, in that it's going to go down?
This is not a buoyant situation, Anthony. I'm dealing with a vacuum situation here, so there's no buoyant effects. So let's eliminate the buoyancy issue. But let's
Well,
deal
there
with
wouldn't be any buoyancy in a vacuum, would there? Because the pink ball
exactly.
would.
That's my point. So the way to tackle a problem, Anthony, is to try and simplify as far as you can.
So you'd have to make the weight zero, not put it into a vacuum.
No,
Why
no,
a
hold on,
vacuum?
hold on. This situation I've described here, I've drawn, is in a vacuum. There are no buoyancy effects, okay? And the floor here has got the Earth.
There are density effects, though.
No, they're not.
There are.
Okay. I thought we might come on to this. I'm going to get you to try and define force in terms of density in a second. So let's imagine this is the Earth down here. So this is the Earth. So that's what's supporting the spring that Anthony seems to be, of the floor that Anthony seems to be having such a problem with. Right. Now, this is in a vacuum. So the only things you need to consider are the weight of the object, that's a force, and the force exerted by a spring, which occurs because whenever you compress anything, it exerts a force back. Now, if it was a very squidgy thing, like Nathan quoted as the floor outside, the ground outside, it would carry on compressing and then it wouldn't spring back. But if you had a steel bar, let's deal with a steel floor, because that makes the things a little bit easier, it would spring back exactly to where it came from. And hopefully, I cannot believe you do not accept the springs exert a force back. The definition of equilibrium is when the net force is equal to zero. If it wasn't equal to zero, it would be moving. So there has to be a force exerting on this object to make it not move. Now
hang on. We've moved away from that because.
Okay, let's deal with the buoyancy. John, let's talk about the buoyancy situation, shall we?
Yeah, talk about this in the context of neutral buoyancy.
Okay, I will. Okay, so let's imagine a tank. Right, this is a different color.
Neutral buoyancy, right?
Yeah. So, and inside we have an egg. Whoops, different color. The egg color. Let's have a bit of an egg. Right, there we have egg. Right.
Lovely.
Now, when that egg is there, it's displaced a volume. So it's got a volume V. And it's also displaced the same amount of water. So if I
sure.
So right, great.
Well,
Okay,
well,
give me a moment to get into my explanation, Anthony. Right. So that there is the amount of water that egg has displaced. Right. So the egg has mass and therefore has weight. So the mass of the egg is exerting a force downwards.
Well, is it not in a state of neutral buoyancy here?
No, this is independent. It doesn't matter what it's surrounded by. It's always going to. No, it doesn't, because this is where the net force. You need to understand about net forces.
No, hang on. We need to go back to the definition.
No, Anthony, please let me finish my explanation. I'll be there in a second. Give me a few more moments. Right.
Sorry to be that guy. I'm really sorry, Rumpus, to interrupt. So, this is taking place in a vacuum? You say, yeah?
No.
This is no. Now we're in water. This is water now. An egg in water.
So why were we in a vacuum before?
Because to demonstrate the principles, and once you start off with the least complicated situation, you then move on to the more complicated situation. And the egg is a more complicated situation because you're displacing a medium which has mass and weight. So I'm dealing with a simple situation first, and then this more complicated one.
Does the air have mass and weight?
Sorry?
Is the air being displaced? Why have you removed the air? I don't get it.
Because I asked him to deal with it in the context of neutral buoyancy rather than in the context of equilibrium.
He asked me to deal with the situation of an egg floating in water and neutral buoyancy, and that's what I'm trying to deal with here.
Yeah, he's right. But this is where it's about to go wrong. Because if it's in a state of neutral buoyancy, there is no equal.
It's not finished yet. Just let him.
I need about another 30 seconds, possibly 20. Right. So here is the egg of a volume V, and here's the key bit. Well, I won't mention that density yet, but it's because it has a mass m. This egg, and that mass exerts a weight, which is a force. Mass is not a force, remember. Mass is just the amount of stuff there, but it exerts a force downwards, F, which is actually its weight.
But you did just contradict yourself then.
No, I didn't.
You said mass wasn't a force, and then you said it was.
Mass is not a force. Weight is a force. Mass is not a force. Weight and mass are different. I'll explain the difference between weight and mass, which is something you need to be about 14 or 15 to understand, but I'll do that in a second.
Come on, get on with it.
Right, okay. So we have...
Okay, 30 seconds done.
Oh, right, Jesus Christ. Right, so we have an egg, has mass, and it exerts a weight. Weight and mass are not the same, but it has, by being there, displaced this amount of liquid. And that amount of liquid also has a force going down. Now, the question is, which one of those forces is the greater? If the egg is denser than the amount of water displaced, you get Archimedes' effect, and it will, if the water has a greater weight, then it will float to the top. If the egg is made out of lead, then its weight is greater, and therefore they compete with one another. The water that actually was there, effectively, the net force acting on this thing is equal to, and I'll give you the net force, is equal to the weight of the egg minus the buoyancy force, which is equal to, and hold on, I'll tell you what the buoyancy force, whoops, I can't spell, force is equal to the weight of the water displaced.
Okay, well, that's a solid 2 minutes you've had, Rumpus, as opposed to 30 seconds, but there we go.
We have a problem here, though.
Hold on, this is good stuff. He's almost done. Please.
Right, so I misspelled bloody.
Yeah, but we have a problem, though.
No.
So in other words, hold on. So you've got two.
No, not hold on, Rumpus. You said 30 seconds. You've had 2 minutes. Now I want Anthony to respond.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll stop.
Right, so without screen sharing, I'll read to you the definition of neutral buoyancy, and I want you to tell me how this relates to what you've just told us, because I would say it's nothing. Wait. I would say it's nothing.
Rumpus, you had 2 minutes uninterrupted pretty much, other than now when he's still interrupting you now.
Okay.
Just let Anthony respond. You had 2 minutes solid. You said 30 seconds.
Yeah, I'm stopping. I'll shut up.
So what you've just described to us doesn't match the definition of neutral buoyancy. And my question that I wanted you to answer was, how is neutral buoyancy with regards to the egg in the water, suspended in the water, not the same as what you showed us before? The definition states neutral buoyancy is a condition in which the physical body's average density, the egg, is equal to the density of the fluid in which it's immersed. So in the context of what you've just told us, and in the context of neutral buoyancy, you don't appear to be addressing the density of the water and the density of the egg.
I'm about to do that.
Go on.
Right. So when you have neutral buoyancy, that occurs when the egg, the mass of the weight of the egg equals the weight of the water, and that has to be when the same density, because the weight of the thing, as we should know, weight is equal to mass times g, and the mass of something is equal to its density times its volume.
So I've got a bit of a question. Sorry, Anthony,
as
to
these
interrupt.
two things have the same volume, you don't need to worry about that. And so the mass is entirely dependent on the density.
So,
and therefore, the thing that has the most density will have the same mass. If they have the same density...
Okay, you keep saying the same thing. You've concluded, Rumpus. Thank you.
Neutral.
You've given your conclusion. We all understood. But now you've inserted G. So would not the same apply reaching neutral buoyancy in the atmosphere?
Yeah.
With a helium balloon, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, with a helium balloon, for example.
If you filled up a balloon, this is what happens with a helium balloon. So we could actually think of this as being a helium balloon now. We could think of this as the balloon, this thing here, and it has its weight filled with helium. So it's still being pulled down to the Earth, but the mass of the weight of the air displaced is greater. So the air that it's displaced is, no, mate, I'm greater. I have a greater weight than the helium balloon. So the balloon shoots up because all the air around it seeps underneath it because its weight is greater the displaced air has a greater weight than the weight of the helium balloon. So, of course, it zips around and goes underneath because the force is greater, has a greater attraction to the center of the Earth. The air whips around the side of it, and that forces the helium balloon up because the weight of the displaced volume of air is greater than the weight of the helium.
So therefore,
hold
on, Anthony. So there's no need for gravity in that. Then it's just down to the weight of the air.
Well, it does cancel out because well,
you're stuttering away now. You just inserted G when I interrupted initially because it's not needed.
Right, when they're different, it cancels out when you have the same weight. But when they have different weights, well, because the weight is defined as equal to mg.
So you're now talking about the weight again. The gravity bit's not needed. The explanation works with both. The explanation works with both up and down, with simply using weight. You didn't need to insert the explanation. You're just interrupting me now. So you've inserted G at the end when you'd already summed up and explained it perfectly sufficiently. That same explanation was just given again for a balloon going upwards. No need for gravity in that. You've just got the weight. Just got the weight. Oh, you're just not going to let me finish. Just got the weight of the air. That's it.
Right. What's the definition of weight? It's mass times G.
So because you're inserting G, that means that you've got an extra thing that you don't need.
No, it's not.
It is absolutely.
Take density, and you don't need weight in that
specific because the weight. Right, here we go again.
You don't need it.
You do.
You don't need it. No, you can just leave it out.
If you want to put numbers to it, which is what scientists do, if you're going to put
numbers
to it...
No, they don't. Scientists establish cause and effect relationships. They don't put numbers to things.
They do.
No, they establish a cause and effect relationship. That would be science. So they don't put numbers to things. That's mathematics.
They do. All
That's what mathematicians do. You're being confused. Maybe you're stupid. The people who put numbers to things, they're mathematicians. The people who establish cause and effect relationships, they're scientists. You've got the two confused because you're stupid. Okay, Rumpus? Not mathematicians. They're the people that put numbers to things. Scientists establish cause and effect relationships, not put numbers to things. That's maths.
You don't understand cause and effect.
Rumpus, stop. Nathan, can I respond to Rumpus's point, please?
Go ahead.
Would you mind presenting my screen?
Sure.
So, Rumpus, I've listened to what you said about the egg in water and the balloon in the air, and you were talking about the relationship between, well, you've got F equals weight, and then you've got little g and all this maths that goes in it, which is it's a lovely story. But the problem is the definition.
Reality, Anthony, I'm afraid.
Are you watching my screen, Rumpus?
Yeah, get an education.
The definition. Well, I have one. The definition of neutral buoyancy states that it's a condition in which a physical.
I put neutral buoyancy. Did you not see where I put neutral buoyancy, Anthony?
Hang on. Yeah, I'm going to show where you've not done what this says.
I've done exactly what it says.
Just let me answer. Let me respond. It says, in which a physical body's average density is equal to the density of the fluid in which it's immersed.
Yeah,
so we need. Hang on. So we need a definition for the word density. So type in density, and it says is a measurement that compares the amount of matter an object has to its volume.
Right.
That's it. Doesn't talk about gravity. Doesn't talk about...
Indeed doesn't. Yes, exactly right. If you look at my diagram...
Hang on. The definition states that density of one compared to the density of the other, but it doesn't talk about gravity.
Right. And I'll explain the difference. That's because you don't understand the difference between weight and mass. If you look at my diagram here...
Hang on. It says density is the measurement that compares the amount of matter an object has to its volume.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at what I had down here, I didn't actually write it down, did I? Sorry. Okay, let's do that. Density is equal to mass divided by volume. And there, I did actually put the volume up here. I didn't quite get around to that. The mass. So the mass of this, say it's in the mass of this egg. So the mass of the egg, weight of the egg.
Well, we're looking for density, aren't we?
Yeah, and I'm going to include it, Anthony. Give me a moment. The weight of something is mg. The mass of something is equal to density times its volume. But I was able to eliminate volume because both these objects have the same volume.
What's mg?
The weight of something is equal to the mass times the density.
What's mg?
Right, volume, sorry.
What's mg?
Volume. That's the weight.
You said weight is mg.
Times
Sorry, you're not going to answer me.
That's where I'm at.
Got a bit quiet on me. Sorry, say again.
That's where I'm. Nathan's asking the same question that I'm asking. You've said that density is mass divided by volume, and then you said weight equals mass times gravity.
Can you see what I'm highlighting here?
Weight equals volume times density.
times G, because volume
Right,
times
well,
density is equal to
Hello,
mass.
hello.
Hi, Jimbo.
Hang on.
Good to have you.
So when I've researched what it says for the word weight, it says a body's relative mass,
Right.
or the quantity of matter contained by it, giving rise to a downward force, the heaviness of a person or thing. But it doesn't talk about gravity.
Well, that's because it's for layman. Go and look up the
Oh, sorry,
weight
what was that?
means. Go
What was
look,
the
Go
reason?
look at what weight means.
Sorry, I
Anthony.
didn't quite catch that. What was the reason it didn't mention it?
He said
Well,
it was
because
layman.
I don't know. You're not looking. I don't know what tech. What text? Go and look
I'll
at
ask
the
the question
scientific
again.
text instead of
Why
something
doesn't
designed
it
for
mention
children.
it?
Right. So here's your density thing.
No, you're not
Anthony.
going to
Here's
get
what-
away from it. Why isn't
Sorry,
it mentioned? You said something about layman or something?
I didn't quite. Where's Anthony getting this definition? I didn't quite.
No, that's
hear
not
him
the question
exactly.
either. Don't ask me a question. Why
Oh, here we are.
does it
So
not
Ghana fits
appear?
with me. Okay, good. Right.
It says the weight of an object is the force of gravity on the object, and it may
Correct.
be defined as the mass times the acceleration of gravity.
Yay. There you are.
The weight of an object is the force of gravity on the object. And
And there's
right,
there's the
so
formula. Can you see the
You're
formula?
just
in it?
interrupting
Where
your
W
rumpus.
equals mg.
force of gravity
Rumpus,
is supposed
shut
to be a really minor force, isn't it? It's the weakest of the forces.
Not when it's on. Not when you've got a planet exerting it on you.
But it
Yes,
says the weight of an object is the force of gravity on the
Can
object.
you see the little formula, Anthony? Can you see the little formula just after that? It says W for weight is equal to mg. There's the definition of weight and mass and the acceleration due to gravity. That's the formula for weight. And you can see
So-
there's mass and g. And if, as you just defined earlier, mass is equal to volume times density.
We haven't defined mass yet. Let's define
And these
mass.
bodies are not accelerating; they're stationary.
We haven't
Yeah, but
defined mass
still,
yet.
but they've still got the gravitational force acting
Oh,
upon
sorry.
them
So we've got this
stationary.
G that you're inserting, and it's also simultaneously a force that's going to be counteracted. Is
G
that
is
what
not
you're saying?
A force. G is not a force. Weight is a force.
It's going to balance
G
to
is
zero,
acceleration.
is it? It's going to balance to zero. It's going to have a net effect of zero, right, Rumpus?
What is going to have a net effect of zero?
The
The force is,
cancellation-
when something is floating, the net force is zero. So yes, the net forces on an object that's not moving are zero.
So G is cancelled out then.
The G's do count. When you've got two opposing forces, they're both weights. Then yes, the G.
So G
well,
is
actually,
irrelevant
that's
then.
not quite
So
true.
G has a net effect of zero. You're just inserting it.
No, because for instance, on the
Do we
string.
know? Yes, it has a net effect of zero when two weights are balanced. It has no necessity here. No need for G.
Absolutely every need for G.
No, I don't think there is. I
You
agree.
don't understand. You see, the buoyancy. But look,
You're going to start talking about weights again? Yeah? What about the G?
right. If you look at my little diagram with the egg and the volume.
So we
displacement,
are.
you
We're
see
going to
the
start
weight-
talking about buoyancy and density again.
Well, hold on. Which I'm trying to. I don't. I was
You're
trying
just
to neutral
stuttering.
buoyancy, I thought was
Just
the subject
stuttering
at the
right
moment.
in the corner. Toes to the fire.
You're an idiot, Nathan.
No,
I'm
you're
trying
going a bit
to answer
high pitched
which
again.
I'm being,
This happened
I'm
last
being
time,
asked
didn't
three
it,
things.
Rumpus? Went
You're
very
an
high
idiot, Nathan.
pitched.
You're an idiot. So I'm.
Oh, now the ad hom start. Yeah, so Rumpus goes very high pitched when I point out that his toes to the fire, and then he
I'm trying to
starts
talk
the
about
ad homs.
neutral buoyancy.
Then he starts
Rumpus, it
the ad
was nice
homs.
while it lasts.
Neutral buoyancy was that's what we were trying to talk about, wasn't it?
No, G, dickhead.
Okay. Well, I'm going to I'm going to talk about neutral buoyancy where it
So
comes
no,
from.
no, that's neutral buoyancy. So you just insert G at the end of your explanation for neutral buoyancy.
because
That's what
as
you'll do,
Anthony's
like you did a
just
minute
found-
ago. You'll describe buoyancy and density, then you'll insert G at the end, even though it's got a
Anthony- as
zero
Anthony just
effect
found-
when they are
as Anthony just
cancelled in
found-
neutral buoyancy.
as
No
Anthony just
effect
found-
of G. But you'll put it in there
Anthony-
anyway, won't you, Rumpus? It'll be
Anthony
there.
just
Because
found-
you need G, don't you? Need G
As
for your
Anthony
spinning ball a
just
bit
found-
later. Don't you, Rumpus, while you rumpus
As
the hell out of
Anthony
me?
just
You
found
need the G
the
for the
definition of
spinning
weight.
ball bit, and you'll rumpus the hell out of me while I point it out to my
As
audience.
Anthony just found, the definition of weight is equal to mg. So when I talk about the forces of the egg and the displaced water, the weight is defined by the mass of the object displaced, or the egg, times g, the acceleration due to gravity. So it's an integral part. Anthony
Sorry,
found
so
the
when
reference.
it's
well done,
in
Anthony.
neutral buoyancy, you times it by something that's having no effect on it.
Well, if they balance the two forces,
So
the
they
two
balance,
forces going-
dickhead. So there's no effect, but you're just going to insert it anyway because it's useful later down the
don't
line
understand buoyancy.
for
Nathan,
your
I can't have this,
globe
you're too
belief
stupid.
when the ball starts
12-year-olds
spinning, right, Rumpus?
12-year-olds,
Not needed
Nathan.
here, though, is it? Just going to hang
That's-
around
with weight.
with no
Did you
effect.
not-
With
did you not
neutral,
see what
neutral
Anthony
effect.
found?
No need for it to be
Are you
here. It's
denying
just going to be
Anthony's
here anyway.
definition now?
Doesn't actually do anything. It's just in the equation. It's just net effect 0. Doesn't really need to be there. We're talking about neutral buoyancy, fully explained. But at the end, we'll add G in because we need G. Because we've got a religious belief about a spinning ball. And without that G, that spinning ball don't work very well. So it better be here somewhere, right? Yeah? No, we don't need G, Rumpus. It's not necessary to this crappy equation, this mathematics, this non-science, this pseudoscience. No cause and effect being established here, is there? We're not doing science, yeah? There's no systematic experimentation being demonstrated on my screen. Your ability to manipulate numbers, that's all we're seeing. Your ability to insert letters that have no real significance in these equations. That would be G. That's all you're doing. And I'm tired of it. I don't need your G. You need it for your spinning ball religion. And that's all it's there for. Just to prop up your faith in a spinning ball. It's absolutely and completely pathetic.
Yet. So I'm trying to explain neutral buoyancy to Anthony because he wanted to know about it.
No, gravity, not neutral buoyancy. We've got this G that's hanging around for no reason.
Anthony found the definition of weight. And
so what? The definition's got a neutral effect of G. It's not doing anything when it's in neutral buoyancy. It does not need to be there.
Nathan, hang on, stop.
Equation. It's what has to balance.
Rumpus.
It has to have a net effect of 0. It's got to be in there to do nothing, right, Rumpus?
It's in the formula for weight. If you don't understand that, you're stupid.
So it's got to be in there to do nothing. To have a net effect of 0. It's got to be there to do nothing, right, Rumpus?
When two forces, you can have two completely different forces of completely different natures. One could be weight-based, the other could be spring-based. But you've still got to include the weight in one of them. Just because they cancel out does not mean to say that G's cancel out. You have two opposing forces to cancel. They could have completely different sources. One as a source of weight.
I know, we don't need G. That's another way of saying what I've said. We don't need G.
You need G, absolutely need G, absolutely.
Oh yeah, we must have G. Yeah, we've got to have a bit of G. Maybe a bit of R as well. Bit of G, bit of R. Chuck it in.
Not in the definition for neutral buoyancy.
It is. I'm about to give it to you. This is what I'm trying to do.
Listen,
I know, Anthony, I'm trying to give you the new definition of neutral buoyancy.
Nathan, can you present my screen, please?
You're up anyway.
I'm doing it, Anthony.
Rumpus, listen. No, listen. I've listened to what you've said.
No,
I'm going to go. Listen,
you're going to go back to your divers. I'm trying to describe that, Anthony. I'm trying to talk about density. Yes, I'm trying to talk about density, but you won't let me get it out.
But the
so
problem
how about listening to me? How about listening to where I talk about density?
Shut up.
Listen.
Shut up.
Are you just going to refer to?
You're talking non-stop. You've done it for the last 20 minutes. So unless you take turns, I will kick you out. This is your last warning.
You can
please, Rumpus.
Last warning, Rumpus. I'm going to kick you out.
You're trying to censor the reality, Nathan.
Rumpus, please
don't try to censor anything. I'm telling you to shut up, or I'll kick you out.
Just listen.
Cool down, dude. Cool down.
So I gave what I said was a better explanation for why the egg's suspended in the middle of the water and it's not being held up by the ground. And the neutral buoyancy states that it's the physical body's average density as equal to the density of the fluid.
I'm trying to explain that to you.
Hang on, wait.
Do you really want me to kick you out, Rumpus? Hold on, Anthony. Hold on. Rumpus, are you doing this because you've lost and you need to be kicked out?
No. I'm
shut up then. Anthony, shut your mouth. You got 20 seconds. Shut up.
Okay, Anthony, go ahead.
Just listen. Just please hear me out because I don't want you to get kicked. I want you to respond.
Right. But you need to listen to me.
Right. So it states clearly that density is the requirements, right? But you got the word. You got gravity from the meaning of the word weight. Now, weight's not part of the meaning, the definition for neutral buoyancy.
Yes, it is.
Density is.
Yes,
and density is just the amount of matter that an object has.
This is because you're losing, isn't it, Rumpus? One last chance.
Look, Rumpus, look what it says here. It says density is found by dividing the mass.
Formula that I'm showing. Can you see my formula that I'm showing there where it says density? It's in my formula.
It says by finding the mass of an object by its volume.
Yay, which I've got here. If you look at my diagram, there it is. Volume and density. Exactly what you want.
No, mass divided by volume, it says.
Yes, and that's the definition of density. But here's the weight of something divided.
No, but not weight. Weight's the wrong word. It says density.
Not. Because it's the equalization, it's the equilibrium between the two weights that gives you neutral buoyancy.
No, not between the two weights. Between density.
Yes, but it reduces down to density.
Look, it doesn't say. It says
mass.
Anthony,
the word is
please
density.
listen to me. I've got the answer for you. You're not listening to me.
No, I am, and I'm saying you're wrong.
You're not. I'm not wrong. Neutral buoyancy.
You're using weight, but the definition says density. But
yes, I've got it. And if you listen to me, Anthony, I will show you where that is. Please listen.
But you're going to go to weight.
Yes, and because you can then eliminate, you get a cancellation, and then
But
it
the
leaves
word's
you with
density,
density.
Rumpus.
Right, Anthony, can you see that you need to understand the principle that the two, when something's neutrally buoyant, you've got the force of the object that's buoyant,
No,
and the
you
force
haven't got a force.
you have. It doesn't
No,
cease
look,
to have.
it says
Gravity still
density,
works,
Rumpus. It
Anthony.
doesn't
he
say
needs to
weight.
insert
I didn't
G.
interrupt you.
He
Well, I
needs the
did a bit,
force in
actually.
there. May the force be with you. G is always needed. We can insert it somehow.
Weight is always active, Anthony, but because
But
you've
it's
got
not
a
the
net
definition.
force of zero,
Density.
Anthony, you
Density.
confuse.
Not weight.
You don't understand
Not
net force, Anthony.
weight.
You don't understand.
You're not listening,
that when
Rumpus. I'm
two
going to kick you
forces
out.
oppose
No,
one
right,
another-
Rumpus, this is definitely going to be where you kicked out. Not weight, density.
And weight is dependent on density.
No. No, Rumpus, look, it
Anthony,
says here.
I haven't had a full sentence for about 2 minutes now.
It says, Rumpus, clearly, it says density is found by dividing the mass by its volume.
Right, indeed it is, and there it is in my diagram. There's density is equal to mass divided by volume. But the weight, the things that cause things to float or not are their weight. But
No.
yes,
No, that's not what the definition says.
That does, because
The
they
thing
haven't
that's
included...
causing it to... It's,
Yes,
look,
but
it says
if
density,
Anthony...
it doesn't
Right,
say
I've got to
Anthony,
kick
if you
him,
look
Anthony.
at my formula
You can't
here,
shut up, Anthony. I've
because
got to kick him.
two
He
objects...
just can't stop interrupting you, so I'm going to have to kick him out.
You won't let me do my explanation. You're trying to censor it.
I'm not trying to
Rumpus,
censor
it
anything.
doesn't say
you
weight.
just keep talking over Anthony.
Let me give my explanation for you, and then you'll understand.
He hasn't got through a full rebuttal yet. You keep interrupting him. That's my point.
Go and finish off your point. What do you know? He keeps on interrupting me. Go ahead then, Auntie. Do your full rebuttal.
Don't
and then
need to
I will
tell him
answer
to go
you.
ahead, Rumpus. I run the show. Shut
Okay,
your
you
mouth.
tell him to go ahead then.
Just shut up.
It appears, Rumpus, that you will go against what the definition of density states.
Oh, right, that's it. Bye-bye,
favour
Rumpus,
of
you prick.
weight.
You're obviously just getting absolutely obliterated here and cannot help yourself. You've got to
no
obfuscate
one
this
object-
point, haven't you, Rumpus, you little prick?
Rumpus,
Bye-bye.
just listen.
I've kicked him out.
Well, in that case, let me just have the final word. Rumpus is adamant to pull it away from density to weight because weight's got gravity in it. But the definition clearly states the word density, and it says that the density of one is equal to the density of the other. And it's just density. But he has to pull it away from that density. He needs it to include that gravity, so he has to be calling it weight. And if you look back to the what he showed on screen, let me get back to what he showed on screen. Oh no, I didn't get it. But when he was putting all that maths on the screen, honest to God, I was looking at it and I was paying attention, and literally it says density of one compared to or equal to the density of the other, and that's it. Doesn't have to get any more complicated than that, but he has to have that gravity in there, so he has to make it weight. But it's not weight, it's density, and it clearly states it. So that's the reason why he loses his
actually
temper.
the word density is kind of the red herring and the confuser here. It has been clarified that confusion is eliminated with the term volumic mass.
Yeah, but that's not what's described.
I know, I understand. And there are problems with an egg as compared to a balloon. The skin of the balloon allows it to compress from forces on the exterior or expand with negative pressure, where the egg doesn't have that blessing. If a balloon is submerged underwater, the air will compress in it.
That's fair.
That changes the displacement of the volume of water.
That's fair, but that doesn't address the issue of density not needing weight. But Rumpus demands that weight's put in there.
Term density. You're just engaging in rhetorical nonsense with that term.
I'm applying the definition.
No. The definition, if you go even to Wikipedia, it will tell you that using the word density is wrong. So,
yeah,
like
but
it or not, you're adopting grade 2 and infantile teachings of, quote, the word density. It's been thrown out and you're bringing it back in 2018. That word is garbage and just a bad thing to use if you don't really use it properly.
But it is in the definition.
Cork, you measure its volumic mass. Now you squeeze it to half its volume and double its density, then yes, density applies here.
So why does it not apply?
So they also can...
Hang on. You're not addressing why it doesn't apply, because it clearly states by definition that neutral buoyancy requires one density to be equal to the other density.
No, one volume mass to be equal to the other.
No, it doesn't say that. It says density.
No, I know it doesn't, but in science today, real science does not use the term density because of its stupid ambiguity, and it allows people to argue like this over
Or
trivial
maybe
nonsense
the fact that it
because
does
the
that.
word has been rejected by science because it's bullshit. The term real science uses is volumic mass. The term density applies to only a few products.
So you're going to have to redefine
matter.
what neutral buoyancy means then, because
No,
the definition
no,
demonstrates
no.
density.
You're going to have to adopt the true term, which is volumic mass. It's not up to me to apply
T-shirt right here.
bad
All right, I'll
science
do it.
to you and then force you or ask you to recognize good science. Good
Right.
science uses the term volumic mass. Idiots today use density.
Ooh, you're
So
I'll
right.
adapt.
I don't mind
Rumpus
being-
isn't the
I'll
only
adapt.
idiot.
That
It
sounds
takes
like an
two to tangle.
that sounds like
Learn
what do you
what's
call
the
it? An ad
difference
hom.
and that.
No,
Well,
hold on.
learn the
I
finesse
completely-
of the language and of the science. Science does not use density. Today, just amateurs do.
So
You
you're going to
have
tell
to
me
apply
that
volumic mass to all of this bullshit, and you'll start getting your head out of the water. But anyway,
it sounds
volumic
just
mass
like
You
an
better
ad
talk
hom.
like James,
Hold on.
because we're
Johnny
wrong if
John,
we
Hold
know.
on.
hello,
density
Johnny
and
John.
Johnny
hello.
John.
just try to research
hold
it
on.
properly.
Hello?
One
Come on.
Hello,
stupid
Johnny
word.
John. How you doing?
Before we begin, don't comment about my voice. I've got a disability, so my voice is really bad.
All right.
Are we here?
Uh,
Good enough for us. Good to have you.
Thanks.
Sorry,
No,
Jimbo. I completely agree with you, Jimbo. If the terminology is bad, words have meaning.
I'll be trying to adapt because I do agree with you. And
Yeah,
volumic
volumic
mass is very
mass.
clear. It's more clear within
Oh,
the word
absolutely.
itself.
Can I just say, I'm an engineer. I've designed bridges and structures for a long time now. And one of the major factors that the engineer have to do is to take gravity into a factor in order to enable us to find a force, which in turn will enable us to analyze the stresses and strains which the structures may experience while in everyday use. So, and density and buoyancy cannot explain that. What density actually is mass per volume, and buoyancy is actually as a direct result of gravity. Can I just... A couple months ago, I was tasked with designing a fire engine, a piece of equipment for a fire engine. It was like a crane. We call it a telescopic boom. So, have you ever seen those cranes extend?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Well, that's a structure. Look it up. We have to consider that as a bending moment. Look it up. It's a bending moment or a bending. Look up bending moment diagrams. They explain it perfectly logically. Now, that crane has to go up into the air, and the brief that I got was it had to be able to lift, because it was a crane for a fire engine that was able to have a hose at the very top, with that weighed 200 kilograms, was able to pump the water up 35 meters in the air, and it had to have a factor of safety of 35 meters. That was the brief that I got. And so as a result, the first thing I did was I had to find the forces acting on the beam itself. And how I did that was to enable the gravitational energy, or the equations, Newton's second law of physics, F equals ma. Because the true definition of gravity is mass is an acceleration of an object towards the center of mass. And that's been repeated by the Cavendish experiment. And that simple law dictates everything we see, both engineering. Every engineering structure has to actually abide by those laws.
May I add one word here before you get too long? And I just want to ask about shear forces. Now, you talk about this downward pull on your building's design and gravity. What about calculations for lateral shear? when, say, something comes in on a horizontal. Is that gravity calculated there horizontally? We're talking shear strength. When pins shear in bridges, it's just about shear strength.
It's
not gravity. It has more weight and a pin will shear, a bolt will shear.
Oh, hold on,
There's
Jimbo.
shear
Can you just let him respond?
So I did an experiment at my university. It took me 14 hours to do this one experiment. So, and it's when you become an engineer, they try and encourage every single engineer to do this as a fundamental. You've got a piece of metal, and you've got to do theoretical calculations when this piece of metal will break. So you put it between two columns, and you slowly add the mass, and you measure the forces being exerted through computerized digital devices, which allow us to measure the forces acting on the supports, and you will slowly add the masses in kilograms and measure the force, and you will see a direct correlation between the force and the mass and gravity, because gravity is fixed. Gravity is as we
I
know,
can see where this is going.
9.81 meters per second.
So you can't shear steel laterally, and you couldn't do a test on a pin and pull it laterally and break it?
Yes, again, along with
shear.
Yeah.
Hey John, how you doing?
You're talking on a horizontal
Can you hear me?
plane.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay.
That's on a horizontal
Go
plane.
on, Mr. Engineer.
I'm trying to explain how it's actually done in real life. I mean,
We want to hear more about your experiment.
Well, no, I've got a comment from the chat from Gleam who says, "Tell him this is specific gravity or center of balance."
no, we know everything accelerates through the Earth at a rate of 9.81 meters per second squared. That is the fundamental principle and argument. That's what and it's like, you probably don't believe me, but there has been case studies of looking at long structures. If you talk about the flat rotators, that engineers have to take the curvature into consideration over a greater distance in tunnels, let's say.
Sorry,
But you probably
going
won't
off
believe
track
that.
here. Sorry, we started off with you
I'd
going all
believe
over
it
the
if you could
place.
cite
Sorry
any
to
of the
interrupt.
cases.
You're all over the place. We started off with you talking about an engineering
Anyway,
project
no.
proving gravity. Now we're
Nathan.
talking about taking into account Earth curve with digging tunnels. Can you try to just stick with your first example that you said needed gravity?
What I'm saying is, in order to accurately design structures such as bridges and engineering, we need to take gravity in consideration. It's not
Which
density
gravity?
and buoyancy.
Which
9.81
gravity?
meters. Acceleration 9.81, because gravity is not a force; it's an acceleration towards the center.
Well, you just
of
said
mass.
it was a force.
It's a force is derived from it. Hence the equation of Newton's second law of physics: F equals ma, or F equals mg, mass times the gravitational acceleration.
Wait a second. You said force equals mg. What's m?
Mass measured in kilograms.
Mass. Okay, define mass, please.
The atomic structure of
That's not the
atomic
definition of mass.
mass.
Define mass, please.
Mass comes from the atomic structure in atoms.
No, I'm not saying it where it comes from. I said, what is it?
Well, mass is measured in kilograms.
No, I ain't asking you what it's measured in. I said,
What's your
what
point?
is
Get
it?
over your point.
What is it? Define it.
Oh, wait. No, a mass. It's just a mass. A variable
define mass.
constant. Okay, how
This
would
is
you
the
define
rumpus.
mass?
This is that crayon muncher rumpus too. Define mass.
No, you define mass. Tell me what mass
Now,
is.
why are you shifting the burden here? You claimed mass, right? So you define it. Not me, you.
Mass is just kilograms.
Unbelievable.
It's a metric unit.
I'm not talking about units of measure. I want to know what it is.
I've told you what it is. I'm not an expert.
No, you've told
on
us what it's
everything.
measuring. I want to know what mass is now. What is mass?
Oh my god.
Yeah, man, we
Yeah,
want you to see
betcha.
that you have learned it, but you don't know what it is.
Yep.
Then why teach every
Regurgitation.
Why teach every single engineer to do this process if it's wrong?
Because gravity is essential for your belief.
Then, but we use that theory to build bridges.
Wow.
That's not a theory. Mass isn't a theory. Gravity isn't a theory.
So how many of you are engineers? And
I do CNC Fanuc, and I design stuff, and I print them. I can laser cut them.
that's not
It is an engineering and designing.
Yeah, but I'm
Absolutely.
a structural engineer. I design
Well, these little
structures.
things are structures
Who
too.
cares? Engineering is not science. For goodness sakes.
Engineering,
Designing and building stuff. That's all it is.
The first lecture you do in engineering is physics 101. You have to
Really?
know about physics in order to do engineering.
Huh. Okay. So what's the scientific method?
For
How
what?
about steel design?
What type of steel? There's hundreds of different types of steel.
Wait a second. Let's get off this steel thing. You said you were doing physics. Hold on, Jimbo. He said he's Mr. Science. What's the scientific method? What's the first step?
What? Explain what sort of scientific method.
So we're talking about science specifically. You're saying that you've studied science, physics 101, and he's asking you, what's the scientific method? If that's science, tell us about science. What is science? What's the scientific method? Step one.
There's various different elements of science. There's somewhere we observe what's happening and make predictions of what we observe. And there's somewhere we use mathematical equations.
That's not the first step.
To determine what.
That's not the first step of the scientific method. First step, please.
Experiment determined the phenomena using variables.
Okay, so when did the Earth globe model come into existence?
Oh, goodness gracious. No, we're not diverting away from this.
You're telling us this is science. Now we're establishing your science acumen.
Well, yeah, I've got a degree in engineering.
That's lovely.
None of you have.
You know all about science then. So far we've asked you what's...
Well, clearly, Nathan,
don't interrupt.
because
Just
you
listen. You
do
obviously,
not
if you're well
know
educated,
engineering.
you're intelligent, and you know when to listen and not talk. That would be now. So the question on the table for you, sir, what is step one in the scientific method?
Observation.
Wrong.
We observe phenomena and do predictions based on phenomena we see.
Observe what type of phenomena?
You're not being specific.
Yeah, science is very specific, very narrow.
Yes, it's very specific. I'm a mechanical
So
engineer.
what type of phenomena? Don't tell us how specific it is. Just tell us. Step one, you're almost there.
Okay, you tell me. I give up. You tell me.
Natural.
Oh my god!
Listen to this crayon muncher.
Sorry, something funny?
I never heard an engineer like that.
Well, how?
He doesn't know what mass is. You got to observe a
I'm
phenomena.
sorry.
What type of phenomena are we observing here?
I'm just telling you how us engineers, the people who live in the real world, calculate structures in the real world so we can go on building for the real world.
Well, calculations and building isn't science. That's engineering. We're talking about science here.
I'm not a scientist. I'm an engineer.
There you go. Thank you very much. That's what I wanted to hear.
But a simple expression for us engineers is
Sorry, do you know
we
what
don't have
science?
to know about the
Sorry.
theory
What
behind
is
it.
science?
We just have,
You don't seem to
Pardon?
have recognised the relevance. You're now asserting your acumen in engineering again. Do you know what science actually
because
is?
I'm an engineer.
Yeah, I don't
have
care.
a degree
I don't
in
care.
engineering.
Listen
Yeah, and
to
Wolf
the
is a
question.
pilot, so what?
You've ignored the point. You've missed the point. Now, maybe it's because you weren't paying attention. Maybe it's through lack of intelligence. I'm trying to establish why you've missed the point. Why would we be asking you about science? So my question, if you can bear long enough to actually listen to it, what is science? Why would that be important?
Oh my God. Go on, tell me.
I'm asking, it's a question.
Feigned exasperations is not an answer. And he already admitted it, Nathan. He says, I'm an engineer. I'm not a scientist. There you go.
But I'm telling you, we have to use theory.
Yeah, he's still not getting it. You still haven't got the point. You're going to do it again. You're going to reassert your engineering prowess, which we're not interested in. Why would we be interested in science? What is it about science that makes us so keen for this to be science? Are you doing it again? Is this a demonstration of your lack of intelligence? The fact that you can't help but talk when you should listen. Why would it be important that we have science, specifically science, as our standard here? What is it about science that makes it so relevant to us and this discussion? I'm asking. I'm not giving you the answer. I'm asking.
Revolves around science in one way or form. It's simple fact the computer is science. Your laptop is
Sorry, did you just say a computer is science? Sorry, let me just get this idiot's words correct. Did you just say a computer is science?
Yes, it is. That's what.
My God, you are retarded. You literally the fact that you have said that is the very reason I've asked you to tell me what science is. If you knew what science is, the words computers are science would not cross your lips. You would recognise how retarded that statement is.
Luke, I'm sorry. Can we start again? I'm tired.
I think that's such a shame.
Living in your mama's basement.
It doesn't matter how tired you are, retard. You don't understand what science is, and you're being humiliated as a consequence.
Yeah, he's trolling.
So I think it's time, John, for that citation about technology and science, how they get confused.
Okay, explain why engineers have to use gravity as a principle. Please explain.
They don't. Which gravity?
They do. I got taught it.
Which gravity? Stop.
No, you don't.
Which gravity?
Designing tools.
I got taught it by a professor of mechanical
he said gravity,
and
so which
engineering.
gravity?
There's a problem. We've got two types of gravity. Which one?
9.81 meters per second. The acceleration.
That's a number. That's not. What is gravity? Which gravity?
Gravity is an acceleration of a mass. No. Gravity is an acceleration of an object towards a center of mass, proven by an experiment called the Cavendish experiment.
Oh, goodness gracious!
Not an experiment.
You don't even know what mass is.
Doesn't know what science is, otherwise you wouldn't call Cavendish an experiment.
Right.
I've seen it repeated at my university.
Sorry, you don't know what science is. Don't assert that you understand what an experiment is. You don't know what science is. How would you know what a scientific experiment is if you don't know what science is?
I've conducted experiments.
Really?
Where? In preschool?
No, at the university lab.
I have an honest question.
Captain Kangaroo University? You don't know what science is. Do we want to do an experiment?
Go ahead, SX.
Yeah, I want to ask him what happens if he removes the G from any of his equations when he's doing a project. What happens?
Then our calculation. Then everything our calculations just go out the window.
What will be affected? Yeah.
Show some of your blueprints.
What do you mean to go out the window? Define what you mean when you say that.
Hey, that's Anthony. That's a technical engineering term.
I'm
out
just
the window.
Trying to explain it from my perspective.
I know what it means colloquially, but what does it mean in engineering?
I'm sorry.
It allows us to see what stresses are at G. Allows us to see what the stresses are acting on components while being structurally, while a load is on it in like a mass. So what we do is we do equations called F equals ma, mass, no, let me finish, called mass times acceleration. That'll give
That's
us
force,
the force
equals mass. Okay, what's mass?
Let me finish.
No, because every equation, every variable in an equation must be rigorously defined. So you said F as in foxtrot equals m mass times a acceleration, right? So you need to define each term in this equation. What is mass?
I don't know it.
Then why are you parroting it?
Let me finish. Let me finish. Let me please finish.
No, you're not
I
going to finish
overreact.
because you haven't begun yet. You have not yet
Lateral
defined
forces, gravity
your
acting
terms.
sideways.
F equals ma. Mass is
Just said
measured in kilograms. Kilograms or
We
grams.
want to know what
The
mass
atomic
is, not its unit
mass.
of measure. Not its unit
Atomic-
of measure. We want to know its definition. What is it?
Atomic mass.
You can't use the term in the definition of what you're defining. What is mass?
You can have a few minutes if you want. There's no pressure to
don't
bring it
know.
up immediately, Johnny. You can go if you're on a
Nathan,
computer. You can look it up
can
if you
I-
like.
I'm not. I'm on holiday. I'm on my iPad. I'm going on holiday helping my grandparents out, doing a bit of DIY for
Okay,
them.
no worries. If you're on an iPad, you can still press the home button and go to Safari whilst staying on the call, so you can look it up.
Dude, I'm sorry I overreacted. That's my fault. My bad.
You're doing well. You're doing surprisingly well, considering.
Mass is both a property of physical bodies measured of the resistance to acceleration when a net force is applied for it.
That's not
When a
mass,
net
that's
force is-
inertia.
No, that according to a journal article on my university website, published by a doctorate of physics, mass
I don't
is both
care.
a property of a physical body and measure of its resistance to acceleration when the force net is applied. Now,
Then look up the definition of inertia.
Can I please finish?
No,
please finish?
that's the definition of inertia.
I am demonstrating how gravity is used in engineering components.
Here we go.
Now,
Here we go with gravity.
Finish.
Okay, which gravity?
Please let me finish.
No, you have to define your terms.
2 minutes.
No, we're not doing the rumpus 2-minute thing.
interrupting.
If you state something, a term, you have to be able to define it. I'm challenging you. Now, you didn't define mass, you defined inertia. Now you said gravity. Which gravity?
9.81 meters per second squared.
What is that? That's just a number. That's not a definition.
Downward. That's not gravity.
That's a number. It's not a definition. Which gravity? Are you using Einsteinian gravity or Newtonian gravity?
I'm using Newtonian gravity.
Well, Einstein gravity has made Newtonian gravity obsolete.
No, the rules are still relevant.
No. Do I need to? We need to go over this again for the 1,850th time.
Yes, please.
The three
From
laws of physics. Newton's laws of physics.
Newton's laws.
Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. Second law, F equals ma, or F equals mg. Third law, an object cannot change its speed without an exerted force bigger of the one opposing it. Those are the three fundamental laws that we go by.
Well, sir, the laws of physics are all quantum mechanical laws. Do you understand that?
Yes.
And you're for sure about that?
Yes.
Oh my God. Can somebody close the mic?
So, On
I can't hear anything.
Structure, we find forces acting on the structure. That will give us the total force. Bending moment diagrams. Look it up. Bending moment diagrams.
So he agreed that all physical laws are quantum mechanical laws. He agreed with that, correct?
Yeah.
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 That's a problem. You know why?
Why?
Well, the double slit experiment is a problem for Newtonian mechanics. Because let's say we fire an electron, a Newtonian particle, through a double slit. We close one slit and fire a bevy of electrons, and we get 10 hits at point A. We close that slit and open the other slit and fire a bevy of electrons, and we get 8 hits at point A. The Newtonian prediction would be if we fired the same bevy of electrons with both slits open, we must get 18 hits at point A. What do we get at point A? We get a big fat 0. According to the professor of physics at Yale, Professor Shanker, that is the end of Newtonian physics.
And with
have a nice day. I'll be here all week.
I was going to say, and with that, I'll say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully sharing this debate. If you hated the show, I'm sure you've probably disliked it and ridiculed it in the chat already. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it with a friend or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I'll see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!